Hello, I'm Dave. I help business leaders who use technology more effectively in their business. But today we're talking about the difference between employing a full-time chief information officer or an IT director or whatever you want to call them versus employing a fractional IT director, vCIO as we call them, and what the difference are, what the advantages are, what the disadvantages are of both options. So let's get going. So the most obvious difference is going to be down to cost. So a vCIO is going to cost substantially less than a full-time staff member, obviously because you're employing them for a lot less time. Now, if you're a startup phase business, it can be very handy to have somebody as a vCIO to come into your business when you're starting up to give you that expertise advice, especially if you're thinking of doing software development or something like that, because you can spend a lot of money buying things you don't need. And obviously startups, especially if you've not done it many times before, there's a lot of things to organise, there's a lot going on, so a voice of sanity can be really valuable. And then when you get to the stage you can employ a full-time IT director, great. It'll be way cheaper to have somebody that's got a wealth of experience that's done this 20, 30 times before, at least. They'll be able to do a lot more to get you up and running quickly without wasting huge amounts of that investment capital. If you're employing somebody full-time, that's going to involve a significant financial commitment. You've got to find them, you've got to employ them, you've got to pay payroll, tax, give them a desk, a chair, a computer, etc. And all of those costs you don't need to really worry about if you've got a vCIO, because they'll do all that for you. They probably would like some access to the IT systems, but it's not essential. Depending on what you want them to do. Obviously, if you want them to be doing projects and technical stuff, they're going to need access to do that. But presumably a lot of IT directors are actually not very hands-on. I'm quite technical, but a lot of people aren't because it's not necessary. I think it's better, but it's not necessary. So they don't need a lot of access. And one of the important things that you need to make sure as a business owner is you've got your data silos and people don't have access to systems, they don't need them. It's very easy for high up management people to go, but I need access to all this. It's just putting the business at risk because they don't. They're not going to look at it. Then another thing to think about is training. If you employ somebody, you're going to have to train them. You're going to have to monitor and manage them, support them, deal with whatever problems they might have. Whereas if you've got your vCIO coming in, that's not your problem. If they need training, they can pay for it themselves within reason. Obviously, if you've got specialist software, you might want to put them through the training program. We often do that. If you've got specialist applications, we'll go and spend time learning about it, because in order to help your business use the tool effectively, we need to understand it well. And often we find that the manufacturer of a lot of these tools goes, but it does this, this, and this. We just want them to use it, and they're not using it. It's quite hard sometimes if we're kind of looking from a technical perspective or from a management perspective to see what the tool does and how people use it. So spending a little bit of time actually getting to grips with the tool properly is really, really valuable. Certainly some of these tools can take months, if not years and years, to set up and use effectively. And you can be leaving a lot of money on the table if the management team doesn't understand what the tool can and can't do. I've talked about this in other videos, this idea of making sure that you're using the tools that you've already bought effectively. And that's one of the things that your vCIO can help you with. So overall on cost, vCIO probably works out significantly cheaper than employing a full-time IT director or CIO. If you employ a full-time IT manager, they're going to understand your business really well. They've probably got industry experience in your industry. Whereas if you employ a fractional IT director, they may have less experience in your industry. They still may have substantial, but it may be less in your specific company. But by working in lots of industries, you can see what works and what doesn't work. So I've worked with lots of accountants, architects, construction companies, all sorts of different industries. Care homes is a big project for. I've worked for media organisations, and they're all different businesses, but essentially they all produce something, which is old charities, of course, as well. They all produce something, apart from the charities or of the non-profits, they're there to make money. That's the fundamental goal of the business. So actually a lot of this stuff is very transferable, and the problems that you get in one business are very similar to problems you get in another. Often when I start working with businesses, I start talking about the business life cycle and what the risks are, what the opportunities are, because I need to make sure I've got an understanding of what's common for all of your business, but also what's unique to your business, because every business is special in some ways, and the team and the dynamics are always different. So it's really important to get a good grip and understanding of that. So for example, I might go into a business where the financial director is not managing their IT purchasing because they're trying to cut costs, and the conversation is going to be around, well, you're trying to save money, but actually it's costing the business more money because you're bean counting, and actually we can go through this and become a better way. Or it may be that you're doing crisis management. So you only purchase stuff or make a decision when there's an immediate crisis. Maybe you're a family business. A family business is notorious for finding it really hard to make technology decisions. I love working with family businesses because it's fun to kind of just play with the dynamics of the team and get to know people, because often they're really friendly, a really supportive team to work with. Not always, but generally I find that's the case. And then obviously you've got your narcissists and bullies getting in the way and stopping us getting things done. So going back to the main point of today's video, having worked in lots of industries, you can take that knowledge and apply it to your specific business. And that's really, really valuable, because technology changes so quickly, you're not going to get the absolutely latest up-to-date stuff, which is what you need to understand to put those processes in place to make sure you're ahead of the competition. Now, there's a very important difference, which is what level people are at technically and what level they're at managerially. So if you employ an IT manager, they could have two completely different jobs. One could be they are your help desk person, they may fix your printers and do stuff with the computers. One could be they're providing business strategy and leadership advice, and they'll be looking at P&L and balance sheets and procurement processes, and they'll be looking at evolving strategies for the business where your marketing efforts want to go. Very different job, but somewhere in between the two, you need that acumen in your business. If the management team don't have any IT decision-making ability, they need to have somebody that understands the IT that can explain it in a language that makes sense to them. So if you're talking to the financial director, it needs to be about finance. If you're talking to the CEO or the main director, it needs to be about leadership. And often the problem is that the IT director can get maligned in the business because they're kind of stuck in this silo of technology that's isolated from the whole business. The whole point of all these things like ITIL is to try and, I know you come across this, it's like a library to try and align technology with business. Technology is 10 times more effective than people. Technology is what's going to make your business almost certainly succeed or fail. So you need to have the right leadership matrix in your team. If you employ an IT manager, they're going to have a part of that parcel. If you employ a vCIO, they can have a different part of that parcel. And it's important to understand, what is it you want to achieve? Do you need that leadership for technology within your management team? Or do you need a help desk person to fix stuff when it breaks? Because that's a completely different job. The problem that we have is some businesses are growing really, really fast, or they're startups, and some businesses are very, very stable and not much is happening. So I work with a lot of firms in the second category. And what I find is that decisions often with technology get left and left and left until it really, really, really needs to be done. And with these startup businesses and the ones that are scaling quickly, the problem is that the decisions that you make today might have to be unmade later on. And often the business leaders don't understand that. So they buy a solution thinking it's going to solve all their problems, or they buy lots of different solutions thinking it will solve all their problems. And then later on they find that it's not a scalable solution. This is one of the hardest things to do, because you've got to ask the business leaders, where do you think you're going to be in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, and try and scale things accordingly. One of the great things about the cloud is that we can stick stuff in the cloud, so we don't have to worry so much about the scalability. Obviously, we're a very stable business that might bring additional costs. So we've got to figure that out as well. There's a lot going on here. If you're employing a full-time IT manager, they're going to want stability. Stability is what makes their life easier, because more technology change costs more work, more time, more effort for them to do, more things to go wrong, especially if you're using cutting-edge technology. Your fractional IT director, they're less interested in that because they're not going to be involved in the day-to-day, it's not working too much. What they want to do is work out what the business needs to take it from where they are now to where they want to go. So they want to look at it, what are we going to do to make the business more profitable? What tools, techniques, processes can we put in place? They'll explain to the management team the risks of doing something versus not doing it. For example, life cycle management I was talking about, very boring, but if you don't replace all your equipment and you've got lots of support issues and the staff are getting frustrated and some of your key players leave, that's not very clever. Likewise, if you buy lots of expensive systems that aren't being used because you don't need them yet, you've wasted lots of money. There is a balance here. Generally, if you need a tool, you should buy it, but you can spend a lot of money on stuff that's pointless in the business. It's very easily done with technology. Obviously, if you're a big multinational company, you're going to have full-time staff. If you're a team of 5, really just about need just the basics of the vCIO that probably your managed service provider can mostly provide. Right, let's talk today about management. One of the most difficult things when it comes to managing your team is having contractors that are doing stuff without any control. And what's super important about a vCIO. And by that, I don't mean an accounts manager or somebody that's a sales member of your managed IT provider. What I mean is somebody who's advising the business how to use technology to grow the business, to be more effective, to be more profitable. That person shouldn't really be making decisions without you. That's not their role, especially if they're a contractor. They really shouldn't be making any strategic decisions without involving the leadership team. An IT director within your business is going to be expected to make certain decisions. And there's often a disconnect between management and technology. And the purpose of the vCIO is absolutely crystal clear. It's to enable the management team to make great decisions. They understand what the decisions are should be made, and they can get them implemented in a timely manner. If that sounds like something you need, and you don't want to employ a full-time person to do that, then you need a vCIO. Do you think that you need to employ a full-time cleaner, a full-time maintenance staff, a full-time, whatever your non-core function of your business are? There's always a move to kind of try and bring things in-house versus outsourcing, and it's difficult to make those decisions well. Generally, I think most people agree now that if it's not part of the core function of your business, outsource it, because it almost always works out cheaper. And you haven't got to manage these people. Somebody else's problem. You just say, do it or we won't pay you. Whereas if you employ somebody, you've got all the HR headaches of dealing with them. If you employ somebody in-house, no matter how good or experienced they are, there is a tendency to maintain the status quo, because if they change stuff, it's extra work. They've got to argue with management about it, they've got to get the funding, they've got to get it implemented, they've got to get project managed, they've got to support it. Often, and this is something that I know from being a technology professional, it's easier to leave things alone. That's why people run systems that are 20 or 30 years old, because it's too expensive to upgrade them. The problem, if you do that, you create something called technical debt. Very expensive to fix. Now, there are businesses where it can't be fixed. So if you're in the banking industry, they're still using batch processing. It's not possible to fix this problem. The only thing you can do is create a new business and then slowly move your customers over to it. So don't get into that position, please. And also, it gets very expensive to maintain these systems once they become obsolete, because you need specialist skills. So you want to be reasonably up to date. Maybe not right cutting edge, but reasonably up to date. And somebody that's working across lots of different businesses, they'll understand that. They'll understand the problems you face. Should we be moving to the cloud? Should we be decommissioning our Microsoft Exchange servers? How often should we replace our computers? Should we buy this new ERP system? What system should we buy? And a great vCIO, Fractional IT Director, they'll have worked on this problem many times before, and they'll be able to immediately come to the table with some possible solutions, and they'll want to do some more research to check what's right for your business. Whereas if you bring in a full-time IT manager, they're going to go with the system that they know the best, and that may not be the best system for the business. It's complicated, but I think on balance, a fractional IT director is going to be better at moving the technology forward, providing they get buy-in from management and the IT team, than a full-time IT manager. The fractional IT director definitely wins if you want to move the business forward quickly. A managed service provider is there to keep the lights on. They're going to look after you, your printers, your PCs, your network infrastructure, your network connectivity, your line of business applications. Make sure everything's working as it should be. But what they're not so good at is giving you the business strategy, that ongoing advice that you need to move the business forward with technology. After all, technology is by far the most effective way of increasing your business profitability. So what do? Well, work very closely with you and the managed service provider in order to develop a roadmap of what needs to be done. So we want to manage the risks. Maybe you don't understand, but the IT provider has, but they've not explained it very well, because the big thing is translating the language of techie speak into management speak and back and forth. Or maybe you've got business opportunities that you'd like to develop, but nothing's happening. It's all going very slowly. Nothing seems very connected. And that's really the job that I have, to come in and kind of give crystal clarity, develop a 2 or 3 year plan of what needs to be done, what the budgets need to be, what it needs to look like. And because I've done this in so many businesses, it's much easier for me to come in and go, well, you're underspending here, or you're overspending here, or the opportunities that you've looked at here don't make any sense, or there's this other tool that I've used for another company in your industry that was really successful. Let's explore that. But the point here is that it's not the same role. So my role is really to sit between the two, not dig down into the technology weeds and end up talking about Windows 11 migrations or whatever to you, because quite frankly, who cares? But what I do want to do is make sure that you're on a supported system so you don't get hacked. So we can talk about what that looks like, what the budget needs to be, and then you've got a clear clarity of reasons we're going to spend this amount of money because Dave says we need to do that, and we trust him, he knows what he's talking about, and that's the minimum spend we can do to get what we need. And then we can focus our energy and our efforts on tools and techniques that'll help the business grow and be more profitable, more successful. The team will be happier, they'll be more effective. I'm doing a series of videos this week on vCIO versus CIO. Yes, what I mean is, do you employ a full-time IT director, or do you have somebody who's a fractional IT director, or vCIO, Virtual Chief Information Officer? Because it's obviously a lot cheaper to have somebody that's there some of the time. And this works particularly well for hybrid or virtual teams. I've run a virtual team for 10 years now, and before that they were hybrid, and before that we were mostly in the office. As technology has moved on, we went virtual a long time ago. It's a very different way of working. It requires very different management techniques, it requires different technology. It's a bit like going to the cinema. 100 years ago, if you wanted to go and watch a film, you had to go to the cinema. But now we've got televisions, you might have heard of them all, or smartphones, and you can watch films on those. So you don't need the cinema anymore. But people still go to the cinema, not as much, but they still exist. And maybe that's true for offices. Maybe in the future, people will still want an office, they just won't go there as much. I think it's quite interesting to think about the psychology of this. And certainly over lockdown, a lot of managers had to wake up to learning to be better managers, because it's not easy to manage a virtual team. It's not easy at all. I know, having done it for a long time, it requires a lot of management thought and planning. So the vCIO role, going back to what I want to talk about, is really great for fractional and hybrid teams, because if you're spread across it globally or across a big area, the team's not going to come together that often. There's things that I can put in place. Really, really simple thing. If you've not got this, on Slack, Teams, whatever you use, create a water cooler chat room, add everyone to it, and say, if you want to talk about whatever, the latest film that's been released, do it in the water cooler. Don't do it in the other place where we're talking about our projects or our whatever we're working on at the moment. Really great way. Little things like this can make a big difference to making your team gel together and be more effective. I know a lot of software development companies, they kind of have these games that they play when people start to try and get the team gelling a bit more, and it's tricky when you're not together a lot, or maybe have never met. But in terms of technology and what you need, a vCIO will be able to help you on that journey. So say you, at the moment, you're in a situation where a third of your team are in the office and 2/3 of them are never going to come to the office again because they hate the office. You're in a difficult position from a management point of view, because some people are going to be very isolated, and you're also different from a technology point of view, because there's two different teams that have two different technology needs. And that's something I come across a lot, and I can really help you make sure you don't overspend. And then there's things like, if somebody's power supply gets eaten by their pet, they can't work because they can't charge their laptop. How are you going to fix that quickly? And setting up tools and processes for that kind of stuff, really, really simple to do, but massively cuts down on people's inability to work and their frustration with their work, because they're not around. There's that camaraderie is not there. For junior people in your team, it's really important as well that they've got the right support that they need, and technology can really enable that. But there's a lot more I could say about this. It's a very complicated area, but what my point is that if you're struggling to manage your virtual or hybrid team, maybe what you need is to have somebody come in who's a virtual IT director to help support the business growth using the team and technology together to be more effective. I hope that makes sense. Let me know what you think. Have a click on the link below. Have a look at my website. I'd love to have a chat with you about how I can help with my fractional IT director services. Thanks for watching.